All right, let's begin with our geometric shape study. So we're going to need our paper to be horizontal format, not vertical, but horizontal. And we're going to start with a sphere that's going to be in the very middle of our paper. We want to draw large so that our three shapes that we're drawing are going to take up all of the space in the end. So you're going to want a sphere, a pyramid, and a cylinder. Here's an example of what it'll look like when we're finished for today's portion. We want to get this far and we'll come back and we'll talk more about adding value change and cast shadow to give these the appearance of being more three-dimensional. We'll start with practicing some line making. So this is going to be the back of my page. You don't need to erase anything. It's just practice. So let's talk about when we're holding our pencil in art. This is a little bit different than we have done in the past. I want you to hold your pencil farther away from the tip of the pencil than you normally do in writing. I've noticed it's quite common for people to hold their pencil about right here, which gives you very limited movement, and you're using more of your fingers rather than your whole wrist and your whole arm. In art, whether we're painting or we're using a pencil, you want to use all of the motion from the pivoting wrist to your fingers to even your elbow to make marks on the paper. One wonderful mark is the arch. We have a natural arch making ability just by flicking our wrists. So in the first year in 5th grade, I like to practice just moving your wrist and creating a mark on the paper that's nice and round. With control of using this mark, it makes it very easy to make circular shapes by moving our paper where we need to move it. By using our whole arm up and down, we can practice making very straight lines rather than trying to control with you plant your hand down on the paper. So keep your hand up off the paper and practice making some vertical and even using my whole arm, don't plant your arm down, some horizontal lines. So the difference is now that we're using our whole arm rather than resting or leaning. It's really important that you hold your paper correctly. So if you're right-handed, you're using your left hand to hold your paper still or to turn it as needed, not to rest your head or your chin on, but to hold your paper still. And you use your whole arm movement, have nice posture to make the other marks on your paper. Practice that for a while. Practice the arch. If you notice that it's going straight off the paper, get control of your arm. Turn your paper and maybe then practice making your marks smaller. This doesn't mean your circles and your spheres should look like they have hair growing all out of them. Control, control. If you notice that a sphere has any pointy edges to it or it looks like a flat tire, practice fixing that. Mine's starting to look like an egg. Once you've had practice and you're starting to get control of your mark making skills, turn your paper over and we'll start with that sphere. So you should have a nice clean piece of paper. Make sure, you might check to make sure you weren't dragging your hand through your pencil lid. If you were, rub it off so that you're not getting smudges all over your paper. The sphere is going to be in the middle. We want it to be very large. And because the sphere is closest to the viewer, we want the bottom of the sphere to be closer to the bottom of the paper than the rest of them. Not on the bottom of the paper, because we still want room for our shadows, but pretty close to the bottom. So I'm going to start where, I'm going to put my finger where I believe I want mine to touch the resting point, and I'm going to start those mark making skills we practice in making that arch, pivoting from the wrist, turning the paper, holding it still, keeping control of my pencil and my mark making. I'm always going up away from my body, up away from my body. Up, 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 up. And then I'm going to look and see where I corrected and clean it up. Once you have your guidelines for your nice sphere, come back around and perfect it. I'm making my line darker now. I started out very lightly, barely making a mark, and now I'm making my dark so I can keep it permanent there while cleaning up the rest of it. And there's your sphere. Pause the video if you need to continue working on it. This is the point where I'd normally walk around the classroom and check and see how you're doing, give you advice on how you're working. Then come back when you're ready. Our sphere is in front of this next shape, which is going to be a cylinder. So the resting point of our cylinder is going to be farther away from the bottom of our paper. A cylinder is made up of two flat ovals that are parallel from each other. A cylinder is symmetrical. So we're going to start by drawing the center line. So if you were thinking of a line of symmetry, let's look at this one. There would be an imaginary line down the very center of this cylinder. So I'm going to start by drawing that imaginary line with the vertical, using the whole arm movement. I'm drawing it. Here's where the bottom of mine's going to be. Here's where the top of my cylinder is going to be. It's connected by two, looks like a flattened oval that are the same size. So here in the middle of my flattened oval is going to be the line of symmetry. So I'm going to practice the horizontal line making, just like this, until I see it appear, and then I'm going to draw it lightly at first, and there it is. I want my cylinder top to be the same size as the bottom. I also want it to be where my sphere is in front of the cylinder, and I can see that's going to happen. So I'm going to draw this, I'm going to visualize it first, and then touch down, and I want it to be about the same size. And then I'm going to connect those flattened ovals at the very edge. Think of it as a soup can. The lid comes all the way to the very edge wall of that cylinder. There it is, a nice big cylinder that is behind the sphere. If it's not quite as big as mine, that's okay, but two things that I do want you to make sure of is that this line goes through your sphere so you know it's behind, and that the bottom of the sphere is closer to the bottom of the page than the bottom of your cylinder. Next is the pyramid. The pyramid is also behind the sphere, so we want the resting point to be farther away than the resting point of the sphere. Draw that resting point, and then straight up above it, you're going to draw another point. Then somewhere inside your sphere, you're going to draw one of the back points and another over here. To me, I think the pyramid's the easiest one because then you're just going to connect the lines. First, connect these as verticals. Oh, I missed the point. There we go. So there's my vertical line. I'm going to connect this point up as well. So I'm going to look at that point. Connect it nice and straight. Helps me if I turn my paper so that I'm making a nice vertical line. And then you're going to come back down to this bottom point and connect these as well to those outside points. Right? Like that. So we have a sphere, a cylinder, and a pyramid. All are geometric shapes. All are easily defined and measurable. Now, last thing to do for this part of the lesson is clean it up. So we already made the outline of our sphere nice and dark. Anything that is inside your sphere, you can now erase. This is going to help it to look like it is in front of the other two shapes as well. Remember to erase by taking your time and aiming at where the pencil mark is. It's not going to erase if you don't get it in the right spot. This line of symmetry that is inside your cylinder can be erased. This back line of that oval, the one that is behind the wall of the cylinder, needs to be erased. So you're just left with the one that's closest to the bottom of the page. And I'm going to make that one darker and clean it up. I'm going to continue the line up here. Both of these stay because it's on top, but I'm going to clean it up and make my shape a little more regular. Oops, because it's a little flat over here. Clean it up. And with our pyramid, we're just going to clean up those lines, make sure they don't look fuzzy or hairy. And there, that's it for today. When we come back next week, we're going to work on value change, and then we're going to create line in the correct direction to emphasize the shape of our geometric shapes, and we're going to create a value change going across them, indicating the illusion of light in our paper. We're also going to create a cast shadow, because where there is light, there will be shadow on those objects. So use your time well. Take your time and create the most beautiful geometric figures you can to be ready for next week's lesson.